I want to juxtapose. Do we have the Kamala Harris thing? Yep. So I think one of the biggest efforts that the corporate sector has done has been to try to brand the ecological crisis as like a boutique concern of the affluent. And then at the same time, there has been, in fact, a big growth industry in making ecology a boutique concern of the affluent. That if you use a reusable bag, if you shop for, organic food, if you have socially responsible investments, quote unquote, socially responsible investments, you're quote unquote doing your part. And again, I always really want to be clear. None of these problems will be solved by individual action or by consumer choices, period, full stop. However, it's great. I try to make small choices in my life that will be positive for the environment as well. One of the great benefits of living in New York City, frankly, is not owning a car. And actually, that probably cumulatively does have a bit of an effect on emissions, right? But most people are not in a position to make that choice. I buy organic food. I do think it's better for the environment and healthier. I make absolutely no bones about it. So my argument is not against these actions. It is against the mindset and the propaganda that is taking a massive collective action problem that implicates the very nature of our economic development and of capitalism itself and reducing it to affluent consumer choices of people who incidentally pretty much definitionally are part of the largest carbon emissions in the world, right? If you're an average U.S. citizen, your emissions are very large. Now, I hate those metrics because we shouldn't be worrying about your individual emission. We should be worrying about Exxon's emission. We should be worried about BP's emission and their politics. We should be worried about the emissions of the entire U.S. military footprint. These are the structural questions we have to deal with. Now, the second order problem here, in addition to the idea of it just being completely conceptually wrong, that your individual choices, whether they be vegetarianism or anything else, can save the climate. They might be of a nice benefit, but they will not solve the problem, is that, as with so many of these other things, it allows the right wing to find, frankly, yes, trivial, elitist, top-down solutions, which are basically trivial and probably end up being annoying to most people. Like a straw ban, which again, before all of the friggin' IMs come in, great. You know what? I go to some bougie coffee shop that makes sure to have ecological reusable straws. That's very nice. And I even sometimes take my carry mug too, so I don't have to use a cup. These are lovely things. But if you're on a national platform talking about dealing with the most urgent question of planetary survival, and you're not talking about systemic policy changes to deal with the ecological crisis, and then you're handing Donald Trump a beautiful chestnut to run with for the whole campaign, a chestnut that isn't going to do anything, banning straws. It won't even do much in terms of dealing with the specific pollution crisis around plastics, which is huge. Well, that's what Kamala Harris did last night.
Straws are a big thing right now.
Yeah.
Do you ban plastic straws?
I think we should. Yes. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. It's really difficult.
No response from the crowd. Wow.
Because it's nothing.
I mean, obviously, yeah. It's just
embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's
You're not even her
embarrassing.
stands like, woo.
Woo!
Yes. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. It's really difficult to drink out of a paper straw when if you're just, like, if you don't gulp it down immediately, it starts to bang.
I was literally just going to say sign doom.
So we got to kind of perfect that one a little bit.
Pause it. We are going to, this is going to be playing in the background of some dystopia and 40, when they had their last cycle of chants, and one montage will be Trump saying it's a Chinese plot, and then another will be her being like, "Oh, we're gonna need to really perfect things before we do the straw ban." I mean, this is just embarrassing. But this is all you got unless you're willing to do a Bernie Sanders Green New Deal. Unless you're willing to say, we are going to spend over $16 trillion. We are going to slash military spending. We are going to radically invest in things. We're also going to implicate the protocols for environmental justice, for indigenous people's rights, all in Bernie's Green New Deals. If you're not willing to do that, I mean, it's kind of the Al Gore phenomenon. Al Gore has done some good work in highlighting these issues, although there's a lot of problematic tendencies in how he frames it. But you can watch of 2 hours of apocalypse porn, and then in the end, it's like, I would change your light bulbs. It's completely does not fit.
So you'd ban it, but rely on innovation.
I mean, we got it. Yeah, innovation is a process, right? You don't just do it. Innovation is a process.
Straws.
But you know, let's encourage innovation. And I think we could do a little bit better than some of those flimsy plastic straws. But we do need to ban the plastic.
All right, we're going to have much more with Senator Harris coming up in just.
Okay, utterly embarrassing, utterly pathetic. And look, I will say, and maybe I'll cover it more later, there were big problems in what Elizabeth Warren had to say about this. The scale of the problem, these economic nationalist arguments she makes, which I don't agree with because of my politics. I actually think, I could see there's salience for some people on the right.
Bosses don't care about borders.
Bosses don't care about borders, and neither should we, frankly, in terms, and especially though on an issue like this. I mean, this isn't a gesture or a slogan like open borders can be in certain contexts. This is literally a global problem. This is climate change. Climate change is quite literally a borderless problem. And I don't agree, a job guarantees that covers 20 million people in the United States and has transition plans is a social justice package. Not there's going to be tax incentives to ensure that the green revolution is done in the United States, old Clinton Obama style stuff. I'm not into it. Now, where she shined was in contrast with Kamala Harris, which is that this ain't about these little nonsense decisions, and stop asking questions like that.
Straws, some of it, dang, is on cheeseburgers, right? There are a lot of different pieces to this, and I get that people are trying to find the part that they can work on and what can they do, and I'm in favor of that, and I'm going to help, and I'm going to support. But understand, this is exactly what the fossil fuel industry hopes we're all talking about.
Right.
That's what they want us to talk about. This is your problem. They want to be able to stir up a lot of controversy around your light bulbs, around your straws, and around your cheeseburgers. When 70% of the pollution, of the carbon that we're throwing into the air comes from 3 industries.
This is it. Okay. This was excellent. This was impeccable. This was so perfectly stated and needed to be done. So just nothing but kudos for Elizabeth Warren on that.
The only slight thing you depend to it is you're not going to be able to do that by greening the military.
No, I mean, certainly not. And again, guys, I know people who get very touchy about all of their various candidates. And I will say to Warren people, those are precisely the criticisms that you would want from people who took your candidate seriously and who just genuinely have a different worldview. And it's true. Her green military proposal is not going to achieve these things, let alone deal with, if you have some concern. And I think, frankly, look, I understand people don't care about foreign policy, but, there's plenty of things that people might not care about that don't affect them personally. And I have to say, a U.S. citizen not caring about foreign policy is the most narcissistic thing I've ever heard in my life. And also short-sighted, because it will come back and bite you. Okay? I mean, I think now a lot of people can see, maybe all that Lula stuff in 2018 does kind of affect me in the form of the future of my ability to breathe. So that absolutely, it's not going to happen through some green military. And it's interesting who she does and doesn't put on the chopping block. Bernie's trying to put everybody on the chopping block, but kudos to her for putting fossil fuels on the chopping block. This is Bernie Sanders from last night getting real about basically just the scale of the problem and who's going to have to pay for it. Or excuse me, this is number 2? Yes. Excuse me, this is him. And this is actually Bernie Sanders making precisely that point, which is that this is a foreign policy question. This is a military industrial complex question. And yes, it's going to be a massive price tag to save the human species.
Thirdly, we are not going to have to spend money on the military defending oil interests around the world. We can cut military spending there as well.
Yep. Beautiful. That was a significant step. And again, Bernie's voted against all of the military budgets put forward by Trump. Warren has voted for all 3. This is a crucial area of distinction. Then Bernie goes on and makes the point about basically talking about who's going to have to pay for it. And as with everything else, single-payer healthcare, you need to systemically redistribute resources that have been illegitimately gained. If you don't have a plan for that, you don't have a plan for 21st century democracy, ecology, or justice. Bernie's putting it on the table. Here it is.
There's folks out who just heard you talk about higher taxes and taxpayers out there paying more. Would you guarantee to the American public tonight that the responsibility for $16.3 trillion, which is a massive amount of money, wouldn't end up on taxpayers' shoulders?
Well, it'll end up on some taxpayers' shoulders. If you are in the fossil fuel industry, you're going to be paying more in taxes, that's for sure. Yeah. And I happen to believe in general that at a time when we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality, where the richest 3 people in this country own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, where major profitable corporations like Amazon, who made over $10 billion in profits last year, didn't pay a nickel in taxes. Am I going to guarantee Jeff Bezos he's not going to be paying more in taxes? No, I won't.
Boom. And that really is the bottom line. Like, look, I understand in the conversation with single payer, to be clear to people, look, yes, there might be a top, and actually Artesia just put this brilliant recently. Yes, you might on the upfront pay a slightly higher tax rate. Almost definitionally, for over 90% of the population, or a vast majority of the population, you will save on the other end from your medical bills and medical expenses. That's true, and there's nothing wrong with transparency about that, and there should be transparency about that. However, again, where is a vast majority of this money going to be coming from to fund things like the Green New Deal and single payer? It's going to come from breaking up the American oligarchy. I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's the bottom line. If you look at the plans that people have put forward in Britain on dealing with the housing crisis, like the idea of actually, okay, you can own a house, but you can't necessarily own the land underneath the house. That needs to be put in a common trust to generate gains for all. We are going to need to find new and innovative ways to break up the just utterly sclerotic concentration of wealth and resources in this country and across the world. And one of the simplest and most direct ways that looks are, well, we're going to take money from global U.S. military empire and we're going to put it into a Green New Deal that transitions the economy. Not greens the military, transitions the economy. And we're also going to pay for it by taxing the hell out of people who should not have a fraction of the wealth they hold to begin with in any democracy or sane society.